What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. It's our weekly show where we review the magic stories as they're posted on Wizards' website. And this week, we are still, happily, here on Dominaria, and we are here for Return to Dominaria-Episode 6 by Martha Wells,
Yes.
as it has been for the last, now 6 episodes. My quick review at the beginning is, this was another nostalgia one. This was another bit of setup, but a bit of character introduction and like the tiniest sprinkling of character development. I enjoyed it for all of those things and for all of those reasons. If for some reason none of that sounds interesting to you, then maybe it's not for you, but I would still recommend it. I enjoyed it. What about you?
It's good.
There you go. See, so much more brief and concise. Our short review in the beginning is blah, 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 blah.
That's what I like to do.
It's good. Well, you know, way to show me up. Anyway, yeah, so the reason we give a short review is, or a quick review is, so that if you have not gone and read the story, we highly encourage you to go do that. We here review, we do not summarize, and so it'll be easier for you to go read the story, and then come back here, of course, we'd love for you to do that, and then you can share your opinions with us, hear our opinions, and go back and forth. And we would love for you to do that. On to the full review itself. We get Teferi back. We talked about it last week. It was pretty obvious. You know, I could be like, oh, hot take, we told you last week. No, it was pretty damn obvious. Joira said, we're going to go see an old time wizard friend. I wonder who it could be. But regardless, we were back with Teferi. We were back with Niambi. I don't know if it's Niambi or Niambi. I will probably jump back and forth between them. I think it's Niambi. But Teferi's daughter.
Niambi.
Yeah, exactly. Just, it's Niambi, right? Just something really ridiculous and stupid. So yeah, I think it's Niambi.
That's insulting.
Yes. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm going to say. So apologies if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. If you're aware of what it is and can type it phonetically in the comments, thanks. But anyway, so we meet Teferi and Niambi in the beginning. Niambi, I think I just said it, but being Teferi's daughter, which we find out super weird. They are both the same age physically, right? For those of us that are aware of who Teferi is from the past, we know Teferi actually super old, right? He was a pre-mending planeswalker, in fact, lost his planeswalker spark prior to the mending and has not had it back since, but yeah, so he's quite old. Similar to Liliana, but I believe older. So there you go. Niambi, from all told, seems to be of normal age and aging normally. And normal she has
age.
Well, yeah, I guess I mean that she ages normally. Seemingly. And so it looks like Teferi fathered a daughter, and now it has gotten to the point where 60 years later or so, she is 50 years old physically, and he is 50 years old physically. But from what he said, or from what the story tells us, because he ages so slowly, he's been 50 for quite some time. So there's that. But we get the two of them together in the beginning, and I liked the interactions between them because, as we mentioned way at the beginning of, we being Amy and I, as we mentioned at the beginning of our Dominaria story reviews, we mentioned that we were going to be reading through the Time Spiral block of books to try to familiarize ourselves with some of these characters, right? And we've seen in card form characters like Radha, who we learned quite a bit about. We know why Venser's not around anymore, but he was part of the Time Spiral book, which is the one that we were in the middle of at the time and that we have now since finished reading, which at the end of that book, if you care to look it up or be aware of it, at the end of that book, I guess spoilers, but the story just told you, that's when Teferi lost his spark. It was right at the end there as he brought Shiv back in. Also, if you're interested in reading the book, where Nicol Bolas is reborn, so the saga The Eldest Reborn, when he comes back, that is depicted in that story. Very, very cool portion of the story where there is an actual Planeswalker duel between Teferi and Nicol Bolas. As there was some discussion on Twitter about a couple weeks ago, Teferi gets stabbed through the brain by Rada at one point. That was awesome. Yeah, right through the bottom of the chin, up through his head. So cool. Anyway, so turns out Teferi was... Some people find Teferi annoying, weird, but more importantly, we get to see, it, from that story at least, more specifically, the interactions between good friends, JaAR and Teferi. Now, they were friends from before then as well, but we can say from our interactions with older Teferi and older JaAR, I got the feeling that just Teferi as a character, and for people who are, I guess, for the first time being introduced to Teferi through these stories, very true to form. This Teferi was spot on. I don't know if you noticed the same in terms of his interactions with Niambi and then later on with JaAR and Liliana and etc.
Well, I would need you to explain how.
Well, so what I wrote as a note to myself is that before, right, as we were reading through, I wrote to myself that Niambi seems to be Teferi's new JaAR. She is acting as the person who calls him out on his BS when he is just doing whatever the hell he feels like because he now used to be a super powerful being, and she keeps him humble. She keeps him in check and she calls him out on his nonsense. And I feel like JaAR was the one that used to do that anytime he would get too big for his britches. And so to me, reading the beginning portion of this story, that's what jumped out. And again, that was the Joe that wrote that note down had not yet seen Teferi and JaAR interacting yet in the story, but I still feel like that was an accurate depiction from my understanding of their relationship. But it was a father-daughter relationship. So it was... Whereas Teferi and JaAR are very close friends, right? Very close, because now you can see that he interacts with his daughter very similarly. But I think what that says to me is that that's kind of the type of person that Teferi needs in his life.
Right.
Right? And he's gotten used to that. And so I appreciated that a lot at the beginning of the story. Did you have any thoughts on their interactions with one another? Did I? I know you agreed.
I thought they were, I agree.
I want to talk about something just for background, if any of you care. There is a series of videos on YouTube. This is not a sponsorship. You do what you want with your time. But there's a series of videos in a YouTube channel called CinemaSins that Amy and I have watched plenty of. And through a lot of those videos, they discuss something called the pronoun game. Right? In movies, someone will say, he doesn't want you to do that. He said this. She would be very upset to see you doing that. And then the person in the story or in the movie has to ask, who's he? And it's only there for the audience, right? It's only there to confuse you as the viewer. And I noticed it, and maybe it's been there before, but I noticed it in this story in the beginning with Teferi and Niambi. I literally wrote down some quotes. From Teferi, he won't beat me. From he's not here. From Niambi, why would he make it so hard? Now, from reading the whole story, we know that he turns out to be Urza, and we don't find that out until much later, but I found it interesting that, it literally is only there, right? What I mean by the pronoun game is Teferi knows who he is.
Right.
Niambi knows who he is. But through having all of these discussions, me personally, I don't feel like people talk like that.
Right.
They don't just say he all over again as if he's Voldemort. right? Where you're not
Dare not
comfortable.
say his name.
Right, where you're not comfortable saying his name. The only reason you do it is for the reader or the viewer, in the movie's case, to go, who's he? Who could they be talking about? Who's this character? And your brain, because this is what is wanted, right? The author, in this case Martha, wants your brain to come up with ideas of who he could be. Could he be Nicol Bolas? Could he be Urza? Who is he? And especially...
Voldemort.
Right, or is he Voldemort? Because they don't want to say his name. But could, especially in a set like this, where it's full of nostalgia and name drops and things like that, I thought it was interesting. I don't want to say that I disliked it. I think it was fine here. Obviously, for a channel like CinemaSins, they consider that a sin on the movie. For the story to give you that opportunity for those people who are a little bit more knowledgeable about the past and interested in the nostalgia, for you to take that minute and go, who could he be? Is he Karn? Is he this? Because there were automatons, and so could it be Karn who's doing this? Who could he be? And so I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm asking both all of you and you, Amy.
Okay.
What did you think of the pronoun game here? Was it okay? Was it dumb? Did you not really notice it?
I mean, I knew who he was.
Oh, you did? Okay.
So it almost didn't register to me.
That they weren't saying his name?
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
And so perhaps that's my argument to your that's not how people talk position, would be that I think that is kind of how people talk.
Okay.
If everyone in the conversation knows what the subject of the sentence is, then you don't have to repeat it.
You don't have to repeat it. I agree with you.
Yes,
but you should say it the first time.
But you don't need to.
Yeah.
If both the people in the conversation know who it is, you don't need to. And I think that's also assuming that there's no part of the conversation prior to that
Right.
that we
and
didn't hear.
Right, and that's what I was going to say is we kind of came to them partway through, but also kind of not. Like they were walking there, you know, and going to go inside, and they knew that going in, and so sure, maybe they could have said, hey, we're going to go try Urza's puzzle again. And so then, yes, in that case, yes, then maybe it would be, well, why did he make the puzzle so hard? Because earlier on they had said it was Urza's puzzle. That's definitely a possibility.
That's a tactic that a lot of stories or movies or TV shows or whatever will use to make people more interested in what's happening.
Yes.
They start with the action in progress instead of, well, let's start getting things ready to do an action.
Right.
Because that's too boring.
Correct. And
so
not
it'll
only
draw people in if all of a sudden the characters are in the middle of whatever this is.
Right. And not only that, but it's somewhat, I would think, of a tactic to keep you reading. You have an inkling, maybe you're even relatively certain of who he is, but until you're told, maybe you want to keep reading until you're told, right? And then once you find out that it's Urza, especially for, I can say from a guy who played older sets, the first set that I started playing in, I've said this a million times, was Urza's Saga. Mm-hmm. So just the concept of Urza in general is this thing. I mean, Urza has, not counting Unstable, Urza has never had a card for himself, although he has been depicted on many. But I feel like Urza as a character is enough for many people where you say his name and they're automatically interested. So to hold off on presenting him, even name dropping him, makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you make them wait for it, so that's fine. So you've talked me into it. Because like I said, I wasn't sure whether I disliked it or whether I was okay, whether it made sense, right? And still, despite the fact that, what Amy's opinion was and what my opinion was and or is, please leave yours in the comments down below. Did you know automatically? Did you not notice? Whatever the case may be. But I wanted to write that down. The pronoun game was heavily played in the beginning of this story because they mentioned it going in, right, when they were encountering the traps, and then they didn't reveal who he was until after they'd come out, having attempted the puzzle in the first place. To the point where I had somewhat forgotten that they did it. I mean, I wrote it down, but I had somewhat forgotten that they did it, and then they went back out and did the pronoun game like 2 more times, right? They said he like 1 or 2 more times after they left, and I was like, oh my god, is this gonna continue to... Because at that point it was like almost to the point of being annoying, because it was like, just tell us who it is, confirm who it is, whatever.
Okay, guys.
And then they did, so I'm okay with it, right? I had no problems with that. Okay. I don't think it overstayed its welcome, I think is my point.
Okay. That's good.
Yes. And then, because Urza was mentioned, I mean, this is been somewhat of a pretty heavy discussion, at least recently, among some more prominent members of the Vorthos community, of the fact that, a lot of people are like, Urza, we want to see Urza again, talk about Urza. And people in the Vorthos community are like, you guys do know Urza sucked, right? Like, he was a real terrible person. Like, he flew by the seat of his pants. He messed up a lot of people and places.
Yeah, he like screwed everything up. And it seemed like he was so full of himself that he just like didn't even care.
So because of all of that, I appreciate it because it, in my estimation, and I do not by any means consider myself to be an expert on these types of things, but I almost think it's like a meme at this point of like, half the people going, oh, Urza, I can't wait to see and hear more about Urza. And the other half of the people going, no, he sucks. Like, he's a great character, and he did a lot of cool things, and he's a very prominent named character. But at the same time, he's terrible to everyone. And in this story, that is flat out told to us.
Yeah.
Teferi says, Urza is not my friend. Urza is not friends with anyone the same way that you and I are friends with people. And so now it has been actually definitively said in the story, as opposed to just you have to read the stories and read the history of Urza to understand all the terrible things that he's done, or either the terrible things or at least the negligence that he has had in so many of his actions of like, I'm going to save the plane by destroying this portion of it.
But also,
don't worry about that.
Also, like, his social life, just sort of that aspect of his personality, that aspect of, just how he spends his time. Obviously, he doesn't spend his time palling around, with anybody.
You don't think he has friends, huh? No, that's the point.
He spends his time working on crazy scientific magic stuff. And he kind of uses people to that end. Oh,
I would just erase the words kind of out of that. He uses people to that end. Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And so from that perspective, I don't know. I mean, stemming from that, right, we get that inkling of Urza, that sprinkling, right, of Urza in the story, because Teferi is attempting to solve one of Urza's puzzles to get an artifact, we find this out later, to get artifacts back, or an artifact back, that would help either bring back Zalfir and or bring back Teferi's spark so that he could bring back Zalfir. That's what we learned, and in the end we learned more about that, but we'll get to that. And so then we find out about Teferi's spark. I mentioned it at the beginning, but the story told us, as I said, Teferi lost his spark back when he returned Shiv. And so because he returned Shiv and lost his spark doing it by essentially purposefully leaping into a time hole,
let's do the time warp again.
It's just a jump to the left, which to you guys is the other direction, but this is my left. Anyway, so yes, so
Teferi
Teferi...
jump into the time
exactly.
bubble.
Yes.
Hole.
So
Tear.
Rift.
Rift.
So Teferi purposefully enters the time rift, is able to bring Shiv back safely, as opposed to what Freyalise did with Yavimaya, and now we're getting way too in-depth, which is not what I am usually able to do with Dominarian Past, so Dominarian Past, so bear with me, I apologize. But anyway, so we find out that that's when Teferi lost his spark. He has not had it since, and so he was not able to return Zalfir, which many of us know was his home. That's where he lived. And so now he is attempting to gain access to something that will bring it back. But even with Niambi's help, he still couldn't do it. At least in the beginning of the story. By the end of the story, he could. It was really awesome. It's very interesting, right? Amy said something that I personally, I didn't mention this to Amy, but I had seen people mentioning online, Amy, when they left the cavern after they completed the puzzle, what was your allusion to pop culture? What pop culture phenomenon did you think of as they were leaving?
I don't know.
When the temple was collapsing around them and...
Oh, Indiana Jones.
Again, I didn't mention that to her. Many people noticed that as well. Amy is not the first. But I think there were a lot of, puzzles in that way are a thing in Magic, right? Teferi's puzzle box is a card from a damn long time ago. We know Teferi likes doing puzzles. He's a blue mage. We know Jace likes doing puzzles. Puzzles are a thing inherent in Lord of the Rings, in Dungeons and Dragons, in Legend of Zelda, Uncharted, a lot of those different exploration type video games in general.
And a lot of just stories from any time period ever.
Correct. And so that's why, it's interesting that so many people pointed out Indiana Jones. You could also argue, it wasn't followed from a puzzle specifically, but you could talk about the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin, right? Where it's all falling around and Aladdin and Abu are going out on the carpet. I'm a Disney nerd too, or geek. Well, who cares, right? So that's it's interesting that portion of the story in and of itself brought so much nostalgia for so many people, recalling back to so many different things. Mm-hmm. I liked that. So obviously, as we said, that Teferi was able to find the artifact. They kind of described it. I would have liked a picture, so that a card art, because there's so many artifacts that needed to be in this set, since historic is a thing, and historic are legendary permanents, sagas, and artifacts. You would think that would have been an artifact. It seems pretty important, but maybe it's not. Who the heck knows? And so then we had different interactions between Teferi and Niambi and the new Weatherlight crew. And including Gideon and Liliana, arguably not part of the crew, just teaming up with the crew to get stuff done, but still.
Because they lost their crew.
Yes, exactly. Which was brought up, and Liliana's like, we don't know if they want to come join us again. And Gideon's like, whoa. That was just a misunderstanding. We just gotta, just powwow. We're just gonna powwow with everyone and it'll be great. Because as far as they're concerned... Yeah, as far as they're concerned at this point, Chandra's coming back at some point. Nissa's straight up not. Right. Ajani's a little upset. And they have no idea where Jace is, and Liliana thinks that he just bailed. Yeah. So, they're a little bit in shambles right now. We'll see what happens with that
Not too in shambles, because, he's all holding the ladder for her and whatnot.
You stole my thing. Yeah. So let's talk about it. What are you talking about? He's holding the ladder. Who's he? Don't play the pronoun game. We just did this.
Gideon's holding the ladder for Liliana.
That's right.
As she climbs it.
That's right. And it's a continuation. If this is the first one of these that you're watching from us, we've been talking about this for weeks. Gideon and Liliana have always had a
chemistry.
Boatload of sexual tension. I'll go that far. I know you just said chemistry. I'll go further. They've had a lot of sexual tension, right? Liliana has frequently described Gideon's muscles over and over again, and is like upset whenever he doesn't have a shirt on, and comments about the fact that he doesn't have shirts on often because he's muscular and that's what he does. And but in these stories, they've developed a lot more of a closeness, I would say partially out of necessity, and then because of that, it has allowed them to kind of break down those barriers of they are typically fighting with one another or kind of at odds morally, and now they don't have to worry about that as much because they're the only other one there. Right. So it's the only other person that they can count on in their time of need, and so they're gonna be with that person, and they're getting closer. And that was
but also their goals are much more aligned than what is the norm.
Right. And so that's
because Liliana is coming closer to Gideon in that she is less, well, I just don't care about anything and I'm an asshole. She's getting closer to, being like a normal human. And then Gideon's over here and he's coming closer to her and in being more like a normal human and less like I'm a robot holier than thou, I killed my friend thing. Whatever his deal is.
Yeah. And I wrote down here, this story was told from Teferi's perspective, Gideon's perspective, and then kind of back and forth between them, right? There were other people talked about in the story, others had dialogue, but we never really got inside the head of anybody except Teferi and Gideon. And yet, I said this either last week or a couple weeks ago, do not mistake the fact that these stories are Liliana's. Do not mistake that. We're going to see Teferi, we're going to see Karn, we saw Joda, right? All of these characters we've seen, do not mistake that these are about Liliana through and through. Because...
you know what? I would have agreed with that statement a few stories back if it weren't for the fact that she just, up and killed her brother... in 5 seconds. That's
important. I still think that's okay. I think that's important because now she's carrying that with her. That has come up since it happened, right? With Ajani, just last week that came up, where...
It seems to be continuing that same trend that we've been on of lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of build-up to something super lackluster.
Well... And we'll have to see, because as we knew, Liliana's character going into all of this, arguably last we knew, was that she was like, whatever, I'm going to use these Gatewatch idiots to help me kill all my demons, and then I don't need them anymore. I will be all powerful and I can do whatever the hell I want. Look at where she is now.
Yeah.
Do you think for a second that she's thought about using Gideon for this? No, Gideon's been on her side, and
she's been vulnerable as heck, and she's been counting on Gideon for a lot of things.
Yeah, and even other people. She's uncomfortable with it, but Gideon said, and she did not refute, they needed more help.
Right.
They knew they needed more help because, as you pointed out, Liliana used the chain veil on Jozu.
Yeah.
Not on Belzenlock, who is the demon she's now trying to kill, who is the demon lord of the entire Cabal that is tormenting the entire plane, seemingly. And now she has to go at Belzenlock without the chain veil, which the last time that she fought a demon in Razaketh, when she had the chain veil, she still had a lot of trouble killing him. So they knew they needed help. She knew they needed help.
Yeah.
And so while this has not been said explicitly or otherwise, I don't think that this Liliana that we have seen up to this point is still thinking that she's going to manipulate the Gatewatch into helping her kill the demons, and then she'll be fine and she can do whatever she wants.
Right.
I think that's gone. That Liliana is gone. And
which is a good thing.
Yes. But the reason I mention don't forget that these are Liliana's stories, even in this story, told from Teferi and Gideon's perspectives, we still get the development of Teferi talking out loud somewhat, but also mainly to Liliana, talking about fixing his mistakes.
Yeah.
And he says, I've been around for a very long time.
Gee, those of us who are old make lots of mistakes, but we have lots of time to fix them, so maybe we should.
And it was, I mean, Teferi may have just lucked into saying that, but it also very well may have been that he gets it.
Right.
He was an almighty planeswalker, right?
Right.
Unlimited power.
He was a walker before the mending.
Yes. And only before the mending.
Right.
He doesn't know what being a post-mending planeswalker means.
Right.
He has only felt the unlimited power and the no power. I mean, he still has magical abilities,
what a
clearly.
contrast,
Right. But he went from one extreme to the other, really. So now he's a mage just like any other, right? I mean, in the same way that Raph is a mage, Teferi is a mage, but he is not a planeswalker, although we shall see. But Teferi still...
no Jace.
Yes. But Teferi still had that opportunity in this story to say that. And for Gideon, at that point, to notice that Liliana was affected by those words. And so, even in a story where she is barely there, right? I mean, what did she have? 4 lines of dialogue, and most of that was her talking about the spirits in the puzzle room.
Yeah.
Which is important, don't get me wrong, but that could have been anybody, right? Any necromancer that walked into that room could have done that for them.
Right.
Liliana happened to be there, but that's not character development. That's just...
Right, all the parts where
it's a means to an end.
they talked about her was her character development.
Yes.
And kind of more Gideon's,
right.
to be honest.
Right, and again, and their relationship developing, which
Yeah.
we noticed, which Amy mentioned already with the holding the ladder. I think from now on we're going to just call that the sexual tension watch portion of this video, as we notice it. I noticed it. Did you notice it? That no. I was doing a thing where
I don't get bits.
where the Gideon's holding the ladder for Liliana. Up there it is. There's our check mark for the week of there's the sexual tension of
okay.
just him being
there
gentlemanly.
were a couple of instances in this story, and there were a couple of instances in last week's story.
That's
too.
what I mean. So when we see him, we'll call him out. It'll be the sexual tension watch.
Okay.
And then we get the big bomb at the end of the story. We get the mic drop, the thing that makes you coming back for more next week and wanting to hear what happens. JaAR has a Power Stone filled necklace that she made, the Power Stone, at the Thran Mana Rig, and it contains Teferi's spark. That's a big deal.
Because why not?
It's a big deal. And I said
It's a big deal because where the heck did it come from?
I said this last week. Well, we don't know what happened when, at least from reading the Time Spiral book, after that big flash of light, we don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's true.
So JaAR very well could have, I don't know how, hopefully they'll explain it, but...
Yeah, we haven't gotten to book 3.
We haven't gotten to book 2 or 3. We're still working on Planar Chaos and Future Sight. But regardless, I mean, if it comes up, we'll read about it. But otherwise, I'm hoping that it comes up in these stories as well, if not, if it wasn't in the books or even if it was. But I want to know, right? I want to know about these things. And I want to... we know. His card was shown in this story. Right? Teferi's picture was there. You could click on it. You could see the card from Gatherer. Mm-hmm. So I'm not giving you any spoilers. Teferi's card is a Planeswalker card. He is one of the 2 Planeswalker decks. Okay, So clearly he gets his spark back. We know that, right? Just like we have known in the past about different story spotlight cards, right? If you know what all the story spotlights are, you know to a degree what's going to happen along the way, at least what the, big bomb at the end of the story is for all of the stories, at least for Liliana's, we know what it is. I won't say it now. We'll talk about it when we get there. If you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to look it up, don't. But if you do, go check it out. It's pretty interesting. I'm curious how they'll do that. But for now, we have Teferi and how he is going to get that spark back from JaAR and what that will mean for his friendship with her. Because that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
How, if at all, will Karn play into this? We still have that. Will we see Joda again, or was that it? Right? He's a card in the set, but that's because a lot of people love Joda and he's never been a card before. But will he be around further in this story? More minor characters like Danitha Capuchin. We've got a lot of time still. In fact, at the end of this story, don't forget, we are now officially halfway through.
Right. Halfway through is halfway through. I mean,
but,
I feel like that doesn't leave a lot of time.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it does because we've been talking about setup a lot.
Yeah.
And so if it spent the first 6 at least somewhat setting up, then they can do the climax and the falling action for the last 6, for the last 5.
Right.
We could have a lot still going on. Okay. Right? There's more to do after Belzenlock. Don't forget. And that's also, not purposefully, but that's also glazing over Belzenlock, which is not something to glaze over. That's pretty important.
There's life after Belzenlock.
Belzenlock doesn't want you to think that, though. Don't.
No, he doesn't.
No. There's no life after Belzenlock, according to Belzenlock. But anyway, so this, I think I'm set. I don't know if you had anything else to talk about.
I wanted to mention something, and it popped into my head, and now I forget it because that was a while back now.
I am sorry. I wanted to talk about, very quickly, just to say, JaAR and Niambi bonded. I appreciated that. That was cool. Again, especially because I had said earlier that I felt that Niambi was very similar to JaAR in at least her interactions with her father. Right? And so the fact that Niambi and JaAR were able to bond over their interest in mathematical equations and solving this puzzle together, I thought that was nice. I thought those two interacting in that way was nice to see, since Teferi had been using Niambi seemingly as his JaAR. Right? So.
And I loved that Gideon in that moment didn't understand what was going on.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, because Gideon would just be sitting there going like, okay, can the math be over
Yep.
so we can get to fighting?
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Hey, I actually liked the dynamic in that room, though, of Gideon and Shauna holding back the constructs, because they're the fighters, Teferi completing the puzzle, or knocking out the hits against the blocks, while JaAR and Niambi were working out the math, right? JaAR is calling out numbers, Niambi is telling Teferi what to do, and Liliana is calling out spirits. Obviously, it makes Niambi look really smart, because she clearly is, based on being able to do all of those equations and stuff. But it shows how similar she and JaAR really are, in that they were able to bond over something like that.
Yeah.
And even what Teferi said of like, I've been trying this for years and you're just going to walk in and do it on your first try.
Right.
And JaAR is like, well, it wasn't me. Niambi did most of it. And so there you go.
She was like, you guys already worked it out. I was just a fresh set of eyes to look at it and say, here's what you missed.
Well, and a fresh set of eyes who knew enough about Urza.
Right.
To say, there's got to be more to it. So, there you go.
Yeah.
Did you think of what you were going to say or no?
No.
Okay.
I'm sure I will never remember that.
Ever. Literally ever. Okay. Well,
For as
hopefully,
long as I live.
wow, that's a long time. So hopefully it wasn't important. But if you have any pressing comments, questions, concerns, or opinions, that's what the comment section down below
Or
is
even
for.
not so pressing.
That's true too. Maybe just tell us how your day is going.
I'll read any of the comments.
Exactly. Like I said, just tell us how your day's going. That would brighten my day up. Hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully this helped. But regardless, all of that, any of those comments, questions, opinions, etc., responses to what we have said, you leaving them in the comments down below would be you showing off your...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
Now, another way to show off your hashtag Vorthos Pride before you all leave would be to watch a video that's going to pop up. It's probably going to be over here. But there's a video that's going to pop up onto the screen, and it's going to be from GP New Jersey. That was a little while ago, and I apologize that it took...
Quite some time.
Sorry. It takes Joe a while to do things, because job and etc. But, all excuses aside, there was a video, and there was a certain Vorthos who was cosplaying in that video as a character. And I'm not going to spoil who the character was. I'm not even going to spoil who the person was. But it was really cool. And you should totally go check it out. You should check the video out. I'm pointing at the video. Totally pointing at the video. Mm-hmm. It's over here. But anyway, yeah. When it pops up, I encourage you to go check that video out. It would help us out a lot, and hopefully you enjoy it. It's a little bit of a vlog. It's like 7 minutes long, something like that.
Yeah, it's short, sort of B-roll kind of-ish thing.
Yeah, you get to see us at GP New Jersey. If there's another GP in our general area that we can make it to, we would love to try. If you guys enjoy those kinds of videos, let us know. But if you're going to be at GPs and stuff, and we're going to be there, come say hello, as always. But if you want to see someone showing off their hashtag Vorthos Pride in public, that's a good opportunity to do that. Check that out, and then leave any questions or comments you have on that video as well. But last but not least, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. This weekend, this is very important to me specifically, but hopefully to you guys as well. This weekend is what? The Dominaria pre-release. It's pre-release weekend. We at this channel love pre-releases. We love them. And if you're not aware of that, if you're new to the channel, or if you just stumbled upon this video, we love pre-releases. We go to a local game store, we get our pre-release kits, and we open them on camera. And then we upload them for all of you to see, whether you were able to make it to a pre-release or not. If you want to see what opening some of these packs looks like, see what sweet cards we open, see what my opinion is about the announcement of the new card coding and the new feel of the cards, foils, etc. See if they're as advertised. Come check out our video. It will be out if you subscribe. That button will be over here. But if you subscribe when that button appears on the screen, that would help us out, first of all, immensely. But second of all, if you want to see us opening pre-release kits to see what the cool cards look like from the set, we'll be opening 3 of them. And so you should check that out. We would appreciate it. And yeah, it'll be up as soon after midnight as we can get the packs opened and get the video posted to all of you. So hopefully, if you can make it out to a pre-release, you enjoy your pre-release weekend. Show off your hashtag Vorthos Pride there. Hopefully you get to talk about story and etc. We'll be doing that. When I open those cards, you better believe I'm going to talk about the story behind them if I know it. So hopefully you guys... Yeah, oh god, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the art's all insane.
What might be good for the deck, who knows?
We'll see. But anyway, yeah, so let us know what your thoughts were of all of that. But besides that, enjoy your pre-release weekend, whether you're participating, watching our video, hopefully both, because I'm definitely going to be playing as well. This has been another episode of JaAR, here on Geek for All. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, guys, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.